to the Lazy Money Machine, where we show you the easy, no-nonsense way to financial and time freedom. Here are your hosts, Graham Brown and Erik Graham.
Welcome to the Lazy Money Machine podcast. We haven't done a podcast episode for a while, a week or so, week and a half.
We're back.
Hi, Graham.
Hi, Erik.
How's things? Where in the world are you today?
I am in a part of Tokyo called Kawasaki, which I guess if you ride motorbikes, you might know it.
Kawasaki, yeah.
There you go.
And you're on your way moving your whole family down to Thailand.
Thailand, yeah.
With some stopovers, bit by bit.
Yeah, so heading through Shanghai and Hong Kong, then I'll be down in Phuket. And I'll come back through Singapore, Bangkok, meet the family in May. So it's all happening. Life is in boxes, but the business goes on. I guess that's something we're going to talk about today. And yourself as well. You're off?
Yeah, I'll be off for 3 weeks starting tomorrow night. And as always, everything comes down to the last minute. For some reason in my life, and I've had this for as long as I'm working and as long as I'm running a business, always, when I leave, there's something critical going on in my life. It's always like that. I don't know why. It's always when I go on holidays. I've had times where I left on holidays where I had to raise money for my company. Now I'm in the same sort of situation looking for property investors. It's amazing. It's always like that. But anyway, that makes life fun. And today we're going to talk about the fun we had for the last year.
Yeah.
We started this journey together, Graham, in May last year when the first email exchanges happened over, us working together. And today we want to talk about, what has this year been like? And also what are sort of the challenges of you and I working together? Because as a note, we haven't met each other for the last year. So we haven't met each other in person for the last year yet. We've written a book, built a tribe, started an online business. So we've done a lot of things together, yet we haven't met in person, which is quite remarkable, I think.
Well, we have met in person, but not in the last year.
That's
just
right.
So people know.
That's right, yeah. So there we are. Take us back to May 2017, Graham. What happened and how did we get together?
Yeah, as I remember, we were both in the process of writing a book.
That's right.
Separate books, and I was writing a book about, location-independent lifestyle, because that's something that I've been doing since 2012 with myself and my family, living all over the world and working all over the world, like working remotely, so to speak, building businesses, earning an income wherever we lived in the world. So I felt, and I think this is the feeling that you had as well, is that I needed to write this book because it just needed to be written. It's like I needed to kind of make sense in my own head of what all of this meant. And, like Steve Jobs says, you got to look back on life and join the dots. And it was kind of like that. I was feeling, trying to put all this together to make sense of it, not just for myself, but for other people as well. Because a lot of people ask me, how do you do that? And often I don't really know the answer, clearly. So it was really a journey. I mean, the last year has been a journey in writing that book and trying to make sense of all of this and put names on things and give it some clear architecture.
Right.
I think we've achieved that. So that was where I was coming from. Yeah. Your story is a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, I had this need to talk to people and show them the alternative to being in a, paid employment or in a job situation. Since I haven't had a job since 2005, who knows? It might change. I'm not saying that I will never work for anybody else anymore, but I think the realization that there's other ways to make your money and have your time to yourself, which was really my big thing, to be able to do what I want to do, spend the time where I want to spend it and spend it with who I choose to spend it. That was really my big thing. But it was so close to what you were writing that back then we decided, look, there's no need to write 2 books if we're, happy working together and write 1. So there we are. That's what we did.
It was about freedom, wasn't it? It's about choice. I mean, whether we were sort of coming from different angles. You were sort of more focused on the process and the how-to, and I was more focused on, what the outcome was, what the lifestyle was. So you kind of needed to put those together because on their own, they sort of had something missing.
Yes, that's right. And there was one other difference, which is that your property investments are sort of really passive at the moment. You're taking the fruits of your labor from the past. Well, I'm still quite involved in building this property income stream. So that was also nice to have that as a different angle to the whole thing, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think what we discovered when we wrote this book is that there's many different ways of being involved in this, right? Of being, ultimately having time and financial freedom, which is really what it was about.
Yes.
There are many different ways, and it wasn't sort of like, well, people look at my lifestyle, for example, and like we just talked about, I mean, we're moving from Tokyo to Thailand.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not for everybody, but what I think we're not doing is being prescriptive about our lifestyle, saying, like, you've got to live like us.
No.
I think ultimately we're saying you've got to have choice. You've got to create choice through, building a system. And once you have that choice, you exercise it in a way that you feel fit. I mean, you could decide not to go anywhere in the world, which is absolutely fine. But you have choice, and that's really what it's about. It's not necessarily about living all over the world. It's about having the choice to do what you want.
Correct, yeah. And crazy enough, I mean, by choosing not to have paid employment, in a sense, makes the pressure much higher, I think, to make it happen and make it work, because there is no fallback, right? I mean, well, the fallback would be that either of us takes picks up a paid employment somewhere again, does a job again somewhere, and that's always a fallback. But I'm trying to work really hard to avoid that fallback, because I will lose part of my time freedom.
Yeah, and I think we've also committed, haven't we? I mean, now that we're talking about it, it's hard then to sort of justify, going back to the life we've left behind, really, in a way.
Yeah, correct. So we wrote a book. That was quite an interesting process, which we treated like a startup almost. And I've learned this from you. You said, look, let's write this book as if it's a minimum viable product, as you explained to me at that point, which is basically the product that is good enough to put out in the market to see whether people like it. But it might not have all the perfection and all the smoothness on it. So that's how we approached writing our book, writing it, trying to get 80-90% of all our ideas on paper, and then really sending it out there to see if there's response to it, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the only way to do it, really, because the alternative is to get the perfect book out. But that will never happen, unless you've got a team of writers and editors like publishers, would have in-house, and you're like a proper author.
Right.
That those days are gone. I mean, unless you're a Malcolm Gladwell or a Steven Pinker or something like that, you're on your own. So the challenge is how do you put a book out that people actually want to read, because it interests you, obviously, because you want to write it, but it doesn't interest anybody else necessarily. So how do you do that in a way which is not sort of risky? And the risk really is, you end up spending a year, 2 years, 3 years writing a book. I'm sure these people. I know people who've been writing books for years. Whatever happened to that book you were writing? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm still working on it. Correct. Those guys are out there.
Oh, yeah.
They'll be doing it until like they're old and go to their graves with them, that book.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shame.
And I think that's mainly because I was once told that the book, for the most part, it's a marketing instrument. So do not expect that the book itself is going to make you wealthy or is going to make you, noticed maybe, yes, but don't see it as something that's going to make you a lot of money. See it as something that can put you on the map as an expert in a certain topic. That means, if you write the kind of books that we've written, right? The how-to books, right? If you want to become a writer of novels, is a different story maybe. Then you will have to live off selling your books. But in our case, it's really a positioning thing, right? We want to write this book to show to the world, look, we know something about this lifestyle. And if you're interested, pick up our book, but then, get in touch with us so we can interact with you.
I would say that applies to a lot of media today.
Yes.
You could be writing a book, you could be recording a podcast like this, you could be building a video channel, a YouTube channel. And I think in all these cases, yes, there are people that make money, and they're quite obvious examples of that. Books, you'd look at Malcolm Gladwell. He probably gets, what's his advance on the next book? $500,000 maybe? Mm-hmm. That's what the publisher will pay him just to write the book. But he's 1 in a million, if not more, right? And it's the same with podcasts as well. I mean, you look at people like John Lee Dumas, Entrepreneur on Fire, makes a lot of money, but he's one in a million, I think. And the same with video. Like people like PewDiePie, who makes $7.5 million a year out of YouTube. Again, I'm not sure if these models are valid models for people like you and I or anybody listening anymore. That yes, you can make money out of these formats like books, but I think the chances of doing that are very, very small. It's much better to look at it as a marketing channel and say, look, this is a way of buying people's attention, earning people's attention. And once I have that attention, how can I make money?
That's right. And I think, moreover, the other thing that we tried to do with this book is sort of try to capture the way that you and I both look at life. I mean, we have very similar outlook on how life should be lived, and how we want to do that. And we did not know whether that would actually, strike a chord with anybody else. So just getting this out there would prove to us, like, is anybody interested in this? And there are people interested in it, which makes it very exciting. So that's what we did. We got the book out. I remember that it had to be out before my summer holidays last year. So I think we did it like May, June, July, something like that. 3 months we wrote it. Mm-hmm. And then we started marketing it and started putting it out there. Knowing, and now we're a year later. And the interesting thing is, Graham and I, we have met in person, but during this whole process, during the last year, we haven't met in person, and we've met online for the whole year, and we were able to build this business together, which is quite interesting, I think.
Yeah, I think you have to. We've met some years ago in Jakarta, didn't we? And I think you kind of have to have met that person at least once. Right. But once is enough, isn't it?
Right.
To all those people thinking about building online businesses and so on. Mm. One meeting, I think, is enough. It's very hard to build a business with somebody you've never met.
Correct.
But the fact that we met once, even if that was for an hour or a couple of hours that time, it doesn't matter. You could then build a business with that person remotely or virtually, so to speak.
Right. So let's talk about some of the difficulties we were facing over the last year working in 2 different locations. What would you say were our biggest challenges?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Biggest challenges. I mean, let's look at it from the point that you and I are not sitting in the same office. There's a real benefit to that, isn't there? Like, if you were just sitting right there where I'm pointing, I could say, Erik, take a look at this. Or, I could just... There's a lot of unstructured interaction that happens in an office.
Right.
That you lose. But that may not be a bad thing, because some of that unstructured interaction could just be wasting time, gossip, all that kind of thing.
Yes.
So you have to kind of account for that. You have to structure that in a way that works. I mean, for us, it was, we had regular calls at regular times. That was really important, I think.
Yeah, with targets, right? So we basically outlined, a couple of months of meetups or calls where we had said, okay, within 3 months, we're going to get our book done first. And so every call was about, okay, do we have another 2 chapters done? Do we have another, so that was very important. I think that's, you need to both be quite, responsible, I think, to the other person to live up to the commitment you've made, and also quite structured in being able to deliver something that you promised the week before.
Yeah, that's something I learned. I don't know if it works for you like this, Erik, but certainly for me is that I think when you work with somebody who's not there, because you don't have the ability to, talk to people casually, you don't necessarily give them the benefit of the doubt, which I think is really important, because if you're in a team and you're working with somebody else and they disappear for whatever reason, like they're not contactable or whatever, that can create a lot of negative thoughts in your head.
Right.
You're like, oh, where are they gone? What's up? Something gone wrong? Are they not talking to me? And so on. So I think that's something, that you have to be, whenever you're in that situation of building a team or building a business where there's 2 or more people in different locations, I think you have to realize that you have to work extra hard to build trust. And like you said, it's about delivering on, the the goals that you set in a meeting, and sticking to the time as well. You know, I think it's so important to turn up at that meeting, even if it's just a chat. Not to, you know, the worst thing you can do is just cancel on that person, or, you know, like keep moving the times around, or forgetting about a meeting. That it's just, you know, okay, in a normal circumstances where you're somebody in an office, maybe that's forgivable. But when you're working remotely, that can cause a lot of problems.
Right. I mean, one trick we use, but I mean, it's quite obvious. We use Google Calendar for the both of us. So as soon as we set up our meetings, we put in, you know, the meetings in both our calendars, and it's quite hard to forget unless you don't check your calendar. That's possible, I guess.
Right. And recurring meetings as well, repeating meetings. That's important.
Yeah. Same time, same day.
Exactly. Get into a rhythm.
You're right. And that was one of the things that is a big hurdle for us working from home and on many unstructured projects, is to create routine, right? So for me, I think if I would have to have, I think if it would be fair to say for me, if I would have written the book myself on my own, it would probably not have happened. But because I committed to you, in this case, to get this out there, it did happen, I think.
Yeah. Same.
Right.
Same for me, Eric. I think that's something that we've learned, isn't it? I mean, we kind of knew it anyway, but if you want to get something done, you know, make a public commitment about it. Because sometimes, you know, to all the people that are listening that are self-employed or entrepreneurs working for themselves or running their own teams, the biggest problem you have is accountability.
Yes.
You know, if it doesn't happen, then nobody's going to kick your ass.
That's right.
And sometimes the best way to kick your ass is to put your reputation on the line.
Yeah. Yeah, and this brings me maybe to a question I have about maybe a bit more recent events. We can talk a little bit about the other parts we did after the book. Maybe we need to do that first, and then we come to the recent issues. But so basically, once the book was done, we decided, okay, wouldn't it be cool that people that buy the book or that are interested in the book are somewhere in a place where we can communicate with them. So then we decided to create this group, and you have this concept about content versus access, and that you can charge for both, right? You can charge for content or you can charge for access. Maybe you can explain how that works. Yeah.
So you effectively, you know, when you're writing a book, you're creating content. If you're creating a podcast, I suppose it's, you know, well, let's put the podcast aside, but if you're writing a book, it's content, right? And if you're blogging, it's content. So a lot of people create content, and some people sell content, whether that's courses or books or any kind of information product. And, you know, I guess when you do that, you create a relationship with the buyer. They are interested in what you've got to say. They have the ability to pay for it. They're willing to pay for it. They trust you. So the next question is, you know, what do you do next? Because you want to upsell something else. You want to, you know, they want stuff from me. They want more information. They want more, you know, help, more guidance, whatever it is that you're helping them solve. And the challenge is that the natural reaction as the content provider is to create more content. So if you wrote a book, you may think, well, if I charged $50 for that book, you know, maybe I can charge $500 by creating an extended version of the book. That kind of thing, right? That sort of mindset. Whereas really what you should be doing is not creating more content, but creating more access. That's a lot more valuable, because what they really want, what people really want once they've engaged with you, is more access to you. And that's where you can, you know, add zeros to the end of the price.
Right.
Because what you're selling is not found anywhere else, right? It's you and access to you and your relationships and so on. And, you know, that sort of one-on-one interaction that they want. That's the real value. So, you know, wherever you are in that situation where you're building information products, is always think about, right, you know, the next step here to upsell is not more content, but, you know, how do I give them more access?
Yes. Yeah, and we've done that by creating the Facebook group, which you can find out about if you go to lazymoniemachine.com. You can buy our book, our ebook, or you can sign up to the Facebook group there. The book at the moment costs $10, and the Facebook group costs $100 to join. The interesting thing for the access part is that we come to realize that although we are giving to the people that pay for accessing us, I think even moreover, we are learning from the people that are actually accessing us, which is really cool. we're getting, our story is only one version of how to live a lifestyle whereby you have freedom of time. Turns out there's many ways to do this, and the way that other people implement these kind of principles in their lives is even more interesting for me to look at, I think, than my own story. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. I mean, and I think this is more value, isn't it, to everybody that's involved? That you might think that is sort of, a bit cheap if you're sort of selling other people's access and their stories as well. You're not really, because that's more valuable. I mean, look at any sort of social media platform. Take LinkedIn as an example, right?
Yeah.
If you joined LinkedIn and you could only learn about Reid Hoffman, the founder, and interact with him, well, what value is that? But, what he's done is he's been clever enough to say, right, well, all you guys want to connect to all you guys. Mm-hmm. So let's do that. And in a way, that's platform access, right? So, yeah, I think there's two things there. The first part is that is the real, value, when you can give other people a platform to share. And secondly, I think that's, not something that you should feel guilty about. You might think, we have to constantly provide the content. But it's going back to that content and access point, isn't it? Is that up to a point, content is useful, but after a point, it just becomes noise.
Yes. Okay, that's very interesting view on I think how we appreciate the people that have joined our tribe, our Facebook group. Maybe talk about a bit more recent developments. We were doing a weekly Facebook Live in the Facebook group, and you and I both were recently, evaluating that and trying to figure out what's the root cause of that being. Let's call it what it is. It was like a struggle for us in the end. And that's the other part, I think, about a working relationship, the way that we have it, is that sometimes when something feels wrong, you need to speak out about that feeling to each other. And I think try to figure out what's the real problem down here. Because we had that with the Facebook Lives. It's video. For those of you listening to the podcast, it's video. And we were, both on the screen. And sometimes we had guests on. And because our group is at the moment still quite small, we used to have one or two or three people watching this live, and we were feeling like, why are we doing this live? While most of our tribes are actually viewing this afterwards, and then we decided, okay, why don't we spend this time that we're together on the Facebook Live on something that might be more productive until the point that these Facebook Lives will have a bigger impact. And that's when we decided, okay, from now on, we're first going to do audio again, because we both love to do audio podcasts. We're well equipped for it. We've done it a lot. So let's continue creating this audio content, which we put out for free to everyone, to basically build our group, right? To get more people in, because we do see the value of this Facebook Live, but it's more valuable if more people are there live right away, so we can answer questions and we can jump on people's comments, right?
Yeah, I wonder, like Facebook as a platform for long content, if you like, whether it actually works, because I think the problem with Facebook, we're up against, if you're doing live broadcasts on Facebook, is that your attention span is very short, because they might see your Facebook Live and then 2 minutes later, like Bob's messaging them, and then you got a video of a cat coming up. So I think that's something you need to think about, right? Is that you're competing with all of that. So that was a challenge for us, I think. Whereas with audio, it's a little bit different. You've got more of an engaged audience, because people will listen to it when they have the time.
Right, and it's a different consumption pattern, if you might call it like that, right? So, the power of podcast is that you can listen to this in private in places where you don't want to watch a video. It can be consumed, commuting, or in a break or in a lunch break, which I think makes it a bit more suitable, I think, for a lot of the content that we're trying to do. So anyway, go for it.
Well, I just wanted to say, look at the numbers. People keep saying a podcast is going away, but last year podcast listeners were up 11%.
Right.
and they've been going up every year. And I think the reason is because it's just signal and noise, isn't it? It's that, Facebook Live is a good example. There's just too much noise out there. And just as an example, some numbers here. There's 500,000 active podcasts on Apple iTunes.
Wow.
So think of that, 500,000. Now, 500,000 YouTube videos are uploaded every single day.
Yep.
So I think that sort of goes to shows that, I have an affection for podcasts. I think you're an audio guy as well. And I think there's something about them, which is that they are more difficult to do. Lots of people choose not to do them for a number of reasons, but the people who listen to them love them.
Right.
And, there's no way of faking it, right? You could fake a video, you can fake a blog post. There's like a robot which claimed to have written 100,000 books on Amazon. No joke. So even a robot can write a book. You can go onto Facebook and chat with a chat bot. It's like the last thing, I suppose, which is not fakeable, is your voice and mine.
Right.
And, that real conversation. So I think, that's why it's a great platform, and we shouldn't sort of throw it away just because it looks, look at it. We're still using MP3s. MP3 technology is like, whoa, that's from, I don't know, the late 90s, isn't it? But it works. And I think that's what people want.
Right. Yeah, so that's how we're moving forward for at least, I think, what we've said, well, at least the next quarter, maybe longer, right? So using publicly available podcast to grow our movement, grow our tribe, get more people in. And we're really interested in getting more and more people in the tribe, not so much making a whole lot of money from it, but we know that once we have, well, let's say 100 people or more into our group, then the dynamics will change so much that it becomes interesting for everybody. So that's really what we're aiming for going forward, right?
Yeah. The point about making money is, for us, it's just like a way of paying for the fees of running this thing, right?
That's right.
What we've decided, and I think this is important, I think this is key to any kind of project that you engage in, is like, what problem is this solving for me, purely from a selfish perspective? And the problem it's solving for us is, wouldn't it be great to be surrounded by inspirational entrepreneurs and investors who are working on these kind of lifestyles and, learning things and sharing things, and that works for us. I'm sure that could work for other people as well, be part of that group. So that's kind of purely from a selfish perspective why we are doubling down on this and making, keeping this thing going and growing it. Is because for us, it's like, well, this is a great mastermind to have, a great group of people to hang around with. Where else do you get that? You can't.
Correct.
Well, there is no other place where you can get this kind of interaction, right? You can have, what are the options? Meetup? Well, we all know about that. That's sort of, it's hit or miss, isn't it? Or, where else? You can't go on Facebook and join a group, or LinkedIn groups are lame.
Well, the only other place where something like this could happen is like training sessions, right? Or these big group training sessions around a certain topic. The only disadvantage of that is that you're in that group or in that setting for 1 or 2 days or 3 days or 4 days. But then, you exchange business cards, but 9 out of 10 times nothing happens afterwards, right? So you lose the group dynamic, and you lose the accountability towards each other quite quickly after the event is over.
It takes time as well, doesn't it? How long does it take to build a relationship in business? It takes more than 2 or 3 meetings, more than 1 or 2 days. And that's what it's about, isn't it? You've got to have that kind of ability to build relationships for these things to work. Like Tom Southerton, who's in our group as an example. I was back and forth with Tom. Tom lived in Fukuoka and I lived in Tokyo, and we were like, I don't know, 1,000 kilometers apart. Back and forth for weeks and weeks, but, we met up when I was in Fukuoka. So, that kind of long-term relationship is the way to build business relationships, right? I don't think you could, if we just had 1 or 2 bites of an interaction, it never would have worked.
Yeah, and this is something, this is a bit of me realizing this earlier on in the year when I had sort of my evaluation of last year. What went wrong, what went well. And one of the things that I realize is that I don't spend enough time building my network. It's quite easy to get complacent if you're in a place like me, in this case, where we can run most of our projects from home and, spend a lot of time with the family and with the kids, which is fantastic. But you realize that real growth and real opportunity, in many ways, it doesn't have to be financial, right? It can be just personal, comes from having real life, deep, meaningful interactions with people that inspire you or are fun to hang around with. And I decided at the beginning of the year, I need to double down on networking, on finding, and not networking for the purpose of collecting name cards or business cards, but networking for the purpose of being around people that I can learn from, or being around people that I can help. Either one, it doesn't matter. Because sharing or receiving is actually the same thing. If you share your own story, you learn something from it as well. So then, for me, it's really important to really meet and be with people as much as I can, because it's so easy to withdraw to your cage and work from behind your 27-inch iMac. That's not the world. And beside it being bad for your health, it's also in the end super superficial, I guess. That's what it is.
Yeah, do you find that you fall into your comfort zone and feel like you're not going out and networking because, I don't know, it's a long-term play, isn't it? You're investing in relationships. There's no immediate advantage. So unless you're, like you say, networking for networking's sake, which is you go out and collect cards, which I don't do. Which I don't think is of any importance, really. You're going out and I guess you've got to find people that you want to build a relationship with, friendship in a way. I was always sort of curious. I mean, when I started out in business, it was always like, right, I'm networking for a purpose. And my purpose is I'm going to meet people and win business. And now I'm like, who do I want to hang around with that's interesting? And I do so much more business with these people, by the, due to the fact that they're interesting and we get on, right?
Yes.
I think that's the way you've got to do it, isn't it? I mean, how do you do it? Do you go out and say, right, I need to find somebody like this, or what's your strategy?
Well, what from personal experience, what has made me do more of this is basically something screwing up. So if something big goes wrong in my life, I usually look around and think, okay, what's the main thing that I'm not doing that either could have caused or could have prevented this? And I realized that the big mistake was basically investing in something I didn't know anything about. Plus, I didn't really understand the people behind this fund that I invested in. So the big mistake there was I trusted somebody else to do something that he in the end did not do. So what I learned from that is like, okay, let's double down on where I can have relationships for the business part. So where do I have, network? Where can I access people? What can I do? And usually the other thing is that if you're in trouble, then it's better to work on building a network and sharing, the struggles you have, because there might be somebody in your network that's able to help or willing to help. So I think that's just really, for me, usually when something goes seriously wrong, then I look at, okay, maybe I need to go and do something else. What am I not doing that I actually could be doing or could have prevented or helped me with this situation?
Yeah, that's sort of the alarm call, isn't it, to wake you out of your comfort zone, isn't it? And we all sort of face that, but it's a good thing in a way. That flame's licking your ass. But, talking about networking and that sort of looking back on your last year, and I feel it as well, is that I think one of the challenges that we have in this situation, you've identified probably the biggest one, Erik, and that is that when you work for yourself, you get into your own little world, and it's so easy to kind of close off the outside world because it's all kind of a bit messy. Like in front of your 27-inch iMac screen, you're the master of the world, right? Master of the universe.
Right.
And therefore everything's controllable. However, out there it's a bit fuzzy. So that I think is a big problem. Add to that, I think the second problem is that as an entrepreneur, I think we have this idea that, we network and then, we think about things like friendships and relationships as something that we're going to do later on, right? Let's network now for business. I've got a business need, and later on, at some point, someday, I'll think about things like relationships and free time and all that sort of nice stuff, right? And then I think, what we talk about in the book is that, well, actually what happens is in life, and I think we're realizing it, as you're sort of getting closer to the edge, if you like, and your time runs out, is that you realize that someday never comes. So all those kind of things that you said you were going to do, like friendships and relationships and all that, probably will never come. So why not make your networking about friendships and relationships as well? And I think that's an important thing, because we kind of try and separate the two as entrepreneurs, because we try to have this sort of focus on, being the business person and focusing purely on our business. And I consider, for example, my relationship with you as a friendship more than anything, right? Mm-hmm. It's a business relationship, but, I very much enjoy working with you. I think we challenge each other in a very good way. We get the best out of each other. And we share a lot of values. We see differently in many cases, and I've learned a heck of a lot. So it's a very rewarding and growing relationship for me. And fundamentally, it's a relationship built on friendship and trust.
Yes.
Just purely than business. And I think that's so important, isn't it? When you talk about networking and being in this situation as an entrepreneur, choose those people because, don't choose people because they're good for your business. Choose people because you will enjoy hanging around with them, and business will come out of that. Because, before there'll be none of that other stuff.
Right. Yeah, and the other thing is, building a business is usually a long-term project. So if you're doing it with somebody you don't really like, that's quite an investment to make. And you might as well find somebody you enjoy working with instead of somebody you don't enjoy working with.
Oh, yeah. We both had experience in this.
Definitely, yeah. And I think, there are many people in the world that are happy to, start and run and work with you on building a company or building a business. It's actually funny. Even when I was still employed and was an expat in the telecoms industry here in Indonesia, one of my main selection criteria for choosing a new job was whether or not I liked the guy that I had to work for. It was actually the only thing that I, do I think I can have fun with this guy or enjoy working with him? Yes. Okay. Right. Well, let's go and do it. There was nothing else. There was not like, how much money do I make? How challenging is the job? What kind of criteria do the job have? Is it, how many staff do I have? Didn't care. I really didn't care. And to me, I think that's sort of, the way I look at many things. The only problem with that, Graham, is I think that sometimes you overlook, or you don't look at things too objectively anymore, I think. So sometimes you look at, okay, I would enjoy working with this person, but it might be on something that is, maybe going nowhere. Yeah. That's a risk, right?
Yeah, that's something that we've had to constantly ask ourselves, isn't it?
Right.
Because, you have to say, and this is the same with any business project. You're absolutely right. Is that, when you have a good relationship with somebody, you worry that, the business and the relationship are intertwined. So if you were to stop the business, then you would lose that relationship.
Yes.
And you'd always give it the benefit of the doubt. And that's really dangerous, isn't it? So, how do we sort of do that? That's a really good point. How do you actually assess that objectively?
Well, we had this recently, right, where we seriously questioned what we're doing here, whether it's going the right way.
Right.
And only by speaking out, I think in our case, looking at this objectively, defining what we want out of this project and seeing whether we could get it in another way with less effort is really whether or not, you would continue with something or not, right? So I think it led, especially in my case, to me having to explain sort of the real purpose I have with this project to you, which I might not have expressed clearly before. which is for me, this is a really important project because it's one of my only online book-related knowledge-based products that I have out there. Well, in your case, you have a few other products that you have out there. And I told you, I said, look, I think this is super valuable. I really enjoy it. So I would like to continue it. And that sort of made you look at this differently as well, I believe.
Yeah. And I think what we realize as well, and one of the takeaways from working in this kind of business setup is that you can work on a project together, but you don't have to make money together. That's another thing to think about, isn't it? Is that you can go into a project like a podcast or a book or any kind of marketing exercise, an event, for example. But, if that project was a way of building your authority, of getting your name out there, you don't have to be intertwined when it comes to making money. So, in a relationship, you can have one person making money out of consultancy, one person making money out of coaching, one person making money out of information products, and so on. They don't have to share the spoils equally, right? So, you can collectively pool your resources on the project, but, not be sort of locked into each other's worlds when it comes to the money side, which I think is a challenge, isn't it? Because, some people, they want to make money differently in a relationship and they want to work differently and at different times and so on. So I think you understand that that's a possibility.
Yes. I mean, some people will tell us, it's easy for you guys to say because you've got money coming in otherwise. And that is actually exactly the risk of projects like this, right? Whereby you don't look at it on the monetary, from the monetary angle, and you say, it's fun to do. Let me just go and keep doing it. The problem with that is that even in our case, if you're not clear about the goals you're trying to achieve, then at some point one of us is going to run out of steam and not going to be, enjoying this anymore, and then basically the project is going to fall flat. So you still need to have some sort of a goal. What are we trying to achieve? Okay, the goal now is grow the tribe, get more people in because we enjoy the people that are in our tribe. And then now we are motivated to grow it again. But if there's no goals, if it's just for fun, it's very dangerous to then run out of steam quickly with a project like this.
I think of Seth Godin and what he talks about when you try and measure your business in the sense of, should I give up? Am I making an impact? Am I doing the right thing? So Seth Godin, the author, who's written many good books, yes, including The Dip and The Purple Cow and so on. One of the things he said, which really stuck with me, and I think of it in this situation, is like, how do you actually measure if you're doing the right thing? Because there's so many different variables, metrics you could use in a business, such as revenue, likes on Facebook, downloads of your podcast, etc., etc. But really, at the end of the day, what's the most important thing? Of course, making money is important, but you can make money out of something that's not meaningful, right? And not rewarding. Ultimately, you'll get bored of it. So the challenge is what Seth Godin says is, answer this question is, will people miss you when you're gone? And, when you're gone doesn't mean like when you're 6 feet under. Obviously, that's one way of going, but it really means when you stop doing what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So think about what you're doing. Will people miss it? If you're sending a newsletter every week, will people miss that newsletter when you stop sending it? If they don't, then stop sending it. You have to look at everything you do and say, what is missable here? Will people actually feel a hole is left in their lives when you stop doing what you're doing? Do they need that in ways that they can't, readily articulate? It goes back to that. I mean, if you've read Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss, the massive book that it is, there's a few good sound bites in it, but the one where he talks about Tim Ferriss and he's facing this situation where he's now an investor in Uber and Twitter and Facebook and everything, and now he's becoming a venture capitalist by default, and he's talking to his friend Naval Ravikant in the kitchen, and he's asking him, he's saying, what should I do? It's like, I've got so many investments and I've got all these startups contacting me every day about this, that, and the other, and they want me to be the advisor of this, and what do I do? And his friend turns around to him and said, yep, sure, you can be a venture capitalist and you could do very well, but will people miss you when you're gone? Probably not. However, you know, when you give a speech, you know, when Tim Ferriss stands up and he talks about, I don't know, let's talk about the 4-hour body or something, or the 4-hour work week or whatever. And after that speech, people come up to him, to the stage, and start talking to him, and they're in tears. And those people are saying, you know, your book, they helped me lose 200 pounds and it saved my life. Or, you know, your book helped me escape the cubicle and, you know, go and live my life traveling the world. You know, and they got tears in their eyes, or, you know, they're happy for joy or whatever. That really is a measure of success, because that can't be replaced. And I think ultimately that's what we've got to get to. You know, whatever you do, not just us, but anybody listening, is that in their businesses, you've got to be constantly focusing on that. What is missable? And if you can't find what's missable, then find it. And if you find what's missable, then double down on that. Because that will produce value, and value will create money long term. I think that's where we've got to take it. So I think, you know, now, Erik, we're starting to see people say, hey, look, you know, Lazy Money Machine, you've really made an impact on me.
Yeah.
So in that way, we're doing something right.
Correct. Yeah, that was, you know, one of our tribe members sent us a beautiful message before the weekend. And it was really, you know, it really impacted me as well, saying, see, this is why we're doing this. And, you know, it's not ego that's talking here. It's like, look, if we can in some way be of a small contribution to somebody making a change in their lives, that's just fantastic. And I mean, it's also when we grow older, the feeling of, you know, what am I leaving behind? What's my legacy? It does become important. And, you know, just making money and just feeding the family, I mean, that's not what, for me at least, is what I want to be remembered by. I'm grateful that my family will remember me by being able to feed them, but I prefer to, you know, to have something that is, you know, is still there when I'm dead. And that some people might still go to or still read or still listen to. And that would be, you know, amazing feeling for me that that's still out there and that's still impacting people. And, you know, you only have one life. You know, you only have so much time. Nobody knows how long it's going to be. Time is the only non-renewable resource we both have. We all have. Do something with it that matters. I think that's really what it is in my case. And, you know, as long as we're doing things that matter, somebody will be willing to pay us something for it so we can live. I think that's also how I look at it.
Can we talk about that post in Lazy Money Machine from Walter?
Yeah, I guess we can.
Now that we've named him. I think we have to, because it really gives people not just an understanding of what we're trying to measure. We're not measuring likes, so we're measuring these engagements, and also an understanding of what Lazy Money Machine's about.
Right.
So I'll read it now. This is from Walter Reich, and he says, today is the first day of my freedom of time and financial independence. Thursday, I had a beautiful farewell reception at the company, and yesterday it was my last day at the office. And he's the boss of this company, right? Right. So, you know, he's got a lot to give up. It still feels awkward, and I guess it will take a while before I get used to it. In 2 weeks' time, my wife and I will be traveling to Ecuador, Colombia, Panama and Costa Rica for 3 months. After that, I'll start looking for new goals in my life without losing the freedom of time. Thank you, Erik and Graham, for giving the insight for a new lifestyle.
That's fantastic, right?
Yeah.
If you want that, guys, go to our website, lazymoneymachine.com. We're happy to welcome you with open arms in our tribe. Buy our book. Check out what we're doing. And I think we cannot end the show better than just leaving it at this quote, I think, Graham. Walter, thank you so much for your nice recommendation and your nice testimonial. And I think we'll continue next week with another podcast episode.
You've been listening to The Lazy Money Machine. Find out more at lazymoneymachine.com.